Hi, I'm John with Beaver Industrial Supply. Today I'm here to show you a lot of the benefits of using a Festool TS saw. There's a lot of features on it that people talk about, but I haven't seen a whole lot of people use it and show what it replaces when you don't have a Festool Tracksaw. If anybody has ever cut down a door, they know what the old system for a straight cut is. Is to take a tape measure and get the edge of the plate on your circular saw to the edge of the blade, and this one is 5 1/8, and then add that to what you want to take off. So we'll say 3/8, so it's 5 1/2 inches. So I got to come out here and mark it at 5 1/2. Mark it here at 5 1/2. Take my straight edge. It just happens to be a Festool guide rail today. Lay it on the two marks. Use a couple clamps to clamp it in place. I did jump a step here. The other thing you have to do too is, because you're going to get tear out on this, is you have to score an edge here. So you're going to want to take a knife and cut along that 1/8 inch line, because you're going to have tear out with the standard blade. And that's the way I used to do it. I mean, some of you guys have made jigs that work well with your own circular saw, but it's still not the easiest way to do it. With the Festool saw, I want to take off 1/8 of an inch. I can eyeball 1/8 of an inch. I lay the tool on here. Take the saw. Because it's got a rubber back on it, it's not going to slip. Take my saw, make sure my plunge depth is sufficient. And it's perfectly straight. There's no tear out. There's no going back and repairing it. It's a drop it, eyeball it, drop it, and cut it off. And it's 10 times faster than the old circular saw method. If anybody has to cut down doors at any point in their career or hobby, this thing is a miracle compared to what it used to be to cut them down. So for that reason alone, this saw is worth the money. Okay, we talked about cutting down the length of doors, but when you have a slab door like this, a lot of times it's not going to fit perfectly or close perfectly unless you put a bevel on the edge. And that's another beauty for this thing. You know, you could wrestle it through a table saw, but it's easier just to do it with this saw. So I'm going to adjust the miter on this just a couple degrees. I'm going to lock it in place. Make sure I got enough plunge available here. Sit on the rail, and I didn't even clamp this, so I'm that confident in the rubber back on this rail it's not going to move. Now, if you got an 8-foot slab door that's 2.5 inches thick, you're probably not going to want to take too many shots on this, but this is for demo purposes, so we shouldn't have any trouble. Pull this back, you can see that we got a slight bevel on the edge. Easier to see from the end, like you could just take the door to move around that quickly. We saw how simple that was, and again, it's a lot easier than trying, especially if you got a solid core door, trying to wrestle it onto a table saw. That's the next thing we're going to talk about, is trying to wrestle a 4x8 sheet onto a contractor size saw. it's not practical, and you'll never get a straight cut lengthwise. So you're better off cutting it down to a manageable size with a Festool saw, and you'll get a dead straight cut with a guide rail. So I'm going to get a sheet of MDF out here and show you what that looks like here in a second. Okay, now I'm going to show you why you don't want to fight this heavy sheet of MDF, especially if you're working with a contractor saw, trying to cut down a strip off of it. It's so much easier with the Festool rail because you're going to get a dead straight cut, and you're not wrestling this. The other thing that's practical that people don't realize is when you're using a Festool saw, you only need about 10 feet of space to actually cut down a 4x8 sheet. When you're using a table saw, you need almost 20 feet because you've got 8 feet in yourself in front of the blade and 8 feet in yourself or a helper on the back side of the blade. So you can work in a much smaller space cutting sheet goods down with a Festool saw. So here I'm going to take off 6 inches. I'm just going to take and make my mark. And I'm going to cover that mark because I don't get, I'm removing 6 inches from this panel. I'm not trying to save the 6 inches. I'm going to take it off of this sheet. So again, as I mentioned earlier, you don't need to clamp this thing because the rubber strip, well, let me show you, the rubber strips on the back grip the surface so it doesn't slide around on here. Now if you're cutting without dust collection, you're going to want to clean the sheet off because you get enough of that dust underneath it, it will slide. But it's a lot more practical to use the dust collection. I'll show you here. First I'll start it without the hose on, without the dust collector. Well, let me start with it on there and I'll take it off and show you. This way I don't get it all over the place. To illustrate how much dust this MDF throws off, I'm going to pull the hose off just for a foot or so. Boy, it's good to use this with dust extraction. And I'm confident enough to use Festool tools with dust extraction, saws, inside a finished house. All of a sudden you look at it, but that thing is perfectly straight. I don't care how good you are with a contractor saw, anything short of a full cabinet saw that's got an in-feed and out-feed table, you're not going to get this straight cut from a fence. So there's things that you can't replace the table saw for. Small repetitive cuts, small pieces, but it makes more sense to get them down to manageable size with a Festool TS saw and then use a table saw than it does trying to wrestle that sheet onto that table saw. So for that and any other information about the TS saws, go to festoolsonline.com. Thank you.